Today, going to cover some Nasdaq futures trading examples from last week and the current week that we are in. Before we do that, if you are returning and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you like the content, please like it. If you watch the video and enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and share. It really does help the channel a lot. So we'll go ahead and get into it. Starting with last week on Monday, right before the Thanksgiving holiday, there was a really nice long sequence here to kick off the week, and a sequence that I actually traded. So what we had was a 50% long just on the day. So full intraday or full week to date, 50% long, 884.75 was that level. And I did not have this trade. I'm just observing this. I'm watching it happen. What I'm looking for is to see if this setup holds and goes to its target, or if it fails and breaks down, heads lower. Because if we go to the target, we're likely going to validate more long setups and trade that sequence higher. If we break this setup by breaking below that red level, the 61.8 level at 873, then we're likely going to continue lower and we'll trade short setups, taking us lower. So we see a great run right after the bell, and we complete both of our targets at 954.5 and 990.75. So when I see those targets complete, I go ahead and draw the next setup in the sequence, and I also draw the same setup to the new high. That is the full setup. So our next setup is 944.75, and our full setup is 919.75. I like to front run these levels to make sure that I get filled because it is competitive, and sometimes you don't tag the level, you just get very close and then rally from there. So I went long 950. I also had orders at 925 in case we did break the next setup and traded the full. But the next setup ends up holding, and we actually paused for just a brief period when we ran into the 970s. And what allowed me to stay calm and patient and let the trade work out was the fact that the S&P, the Dow, and the Russell were either making new highs or heading toward higher highs. So I figured if you have four indexes and three of them are heading higher, the last one's likely going to head higher, not drag the other three lower. And I was aiming for 60 points here. I was risking about 20 or 25 points. So I'm going for just over 2 times risk, aiming for 16,010. And again, got long from 950, so front run this area by about 5 points. And then we ended up rallying to that target and even the Fibonacci target as well. And that was a great way to kick off the week and kind of head into the holiday. So fast forwarding to this week, that's the only trade I had last week actually, because I took Wednesday off. But heading toward this week, so Monday was pretty similar. We saw a very similar setup. There was a 50% long. This is from, again, the week to date or just the full intraday sequence for Monday of this current week. And we saw this area come into play 969.5. We then rallied to a target of 16,014.5. And I did not have any of these trades, but you could have drawn the next setup and you could have drawn the full setup just like we did in the prior example. And we can see this next 50% long ends up failing, but the full 50% long becomes tested, makes a higher high after the bell, and then we ended up piercing the 61.8. Now, again, I was not long this setup. And because I was not long this setup, when I saw the break of this potential setup here by breaking below 970, I figured there could be a potential short here that ends up trading. So I tried to go long 16,000. That level is 16,003. I went short 16,000, stop at 16,015. I was actually stopped out by 2 ticks, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise because really this failure, when I got stopped out, it allowed me to potentially take a revalidated 50% long. So what does that mean? Revalidated means that we had a broken setup, but it did something to revalidate that setup. And therefore, if it becomes retested, it would be valid to get long or short that area, depending on what type of setup it is. So in this case, we have a revalidated 50% long. So it's valid to go long if it becomes retested. Now, we can see, again, the short broke. And because that short broke, that is what revalidates the long setup. So I'm going to delete this to kind of clear things up. And then if we draw the very micro 50% long here from our swing low after the break of the long to the swing high breaking the short, we get 993. I went long 15,993 just in case that got bids. I didn't want to wait in case this didn't get tested at 980 again. And it was a low of 984 quarters. So I would have gone long at 985. That would have been filled, would have worked out fine. But to be safe, I went long 993. And then I ended up letting this run to its target above, which was 16,043. So I ended up getting 50 points on this particular setup here, and worked out pretty well. So that was my trade on Monday, or trade. So again, the first week that I showed you going into the Thanksgiving holiday, there were a couple examples. I had that one trade that was 60 points. And then Monday of this week, I had a loser to kick things off, which lost 15 points, but then I ended up making 50 points. So on the day, that was 35 points. We had 50 from the prior week. That's now 85 points. Um, and obviously, not many trades, right? Only 3 trades, one loser, 2 winners, but still 85 points. That's pretty good trading. So going into today, yesterday was pretty choppy. There's just nothing really there at all. Had a very small winner that I'm not going to cover. It's not worth it. So today, what we have is an example of a couple losers. So there was a full week to date 50% long setup and a full intraday long setup. So going from our low of Monday is the full week to date setup, and the low of the overnight session for this session of Wednesday is our full intraday setup. So 16,125 was that week, or the intraday long, and then we have our full week to date long at 16,073.75. So I tried to go long 16,130, and I put my stop at 16,100. So 30-point risk. I was going to try to make at least 60 points, maybe more, seeing how it goes. But this ended up breaking down pretty quickly, and that was a stop out. So I lost 30 points on this particular trade. And then this, I always leave around 11 a.m. So between 10:45 and 11, I head out and I go either get other work done or I go exercise. So I left for my run around 11:30, but I got off the screens at 11 and I was done for the morning. So because of that, I was able to not lose this trade. Otherwise, I would have taken this long as well, and I would have lost. I probably would have gone long around 78 or 80, stop around 40. So that would have been about a 40-point loss if I had stuck around. But I ended up leaving, so I avoid that loser. And now what I'm looking for this afternoon is going to be a 50% short at 16,120. So we'll see if this comes into play. I have orders at 115. Now we're starting to retest this long again, so we'll see what it does. But if this were to become tested, I'd likely have the trade. We'll see what happens. If we break the short setup by breaking above 16,141, that would be like the setup that we saw on Monday that was revalidated, because we see the long fail. So if we fail the short as well, that revalidates the long at 16,073.75, and we could go and try to go long in like 75 to 80, somewhere in there. But that's all the examples I have for last week and this week. If you like this, again, please leave a like. It really does help. Subscribe if you want to see more content. If you want to learn these strategies more in depth, then you can try out our trade room. Go to FibonacciForecasting.com. I'll put the link in the description, and you can use the code HOLIDAYTRADING for $50 off. Many people have come in and have learned the strategies and then earned funded accounts. I myself have traded multiple funded accounts with this strategy that I've just shown you today, but the trading just goes over that a lot more in depth and offers live trading and things of that nature. So that's all I got today. If you like this, again, leave a like. Otherwise, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.